safe word wasn't coming. It never did, of course. The technique was solid. She sighed against my neck again as I began massaging her peak with my palm, moving my lips against her neck slowly once again, and stifling a massive fucking groan as my fingers touched the skin peeking out of the top of her shirt. She moaned against me, shifting her hips once again, as she began licking my neck. My head was so clouded with lust as I squeezed her peak in my hand that I didn't even give a shit. When she writhed against me, I just kept kissing her neck, pausing at her earlobe to nibble it gently, just the way she liked. I could hear her breath hitch in my ear as she lowered her lips to my neck once more, kissing it with an opened mouth, and pressing into my skin with her teeth as she finally fisted her hand into my hair. The dual sensation of her teeth and her fist made me groan huskily into her neck as I squeezed her breast harder. I should have fucking known the teeth thing wouldn't slip by her. And to do it with hair at the same time. I growled into her neck and used the hand that was still on her hip to push her roughly against my erection. She moaned loudly, still holding my skin in her mouth as she bit down harder. Fucking ruthlessly. It made me grunt as I squeezed her tighter, restraining the urge to raise my hips into hers. I clenched my teeth while holding my lips against her warm skin, and breathed raggedly into it. She finally released my skin, surprising me when she pulled away, sitting straight on my lap, as we both gasped for air, and eyed each other through lust-hooded eyes. She licked her swollen lips, dragging her hands away from my hair, and down my arms as I lowered my hand from her breast in confusion and worry. Her only answer was to bring her hands to the hem of her shirt, tugging it lightly while holding my gaze as she began lifting her hands up and bringing the shirt over her chest. My eyes widened as we stared at each other. I was fucking begging her with my eyes. Don't fucking do it. Please fucking do it. She did it, lifting her hands overhead and completely removing the red shirt in the process. Our gaze broke momentarily as the fabric masked her face, but I didn't look. She kept her eyes on me as the shirt was lifted from her face and head. Her shiny fucking curls lifted with it, bouncing all around her shoulders and chest as she freed the locks and tossed the shirt aside, still staring into my wide eyes. I wanted to look so fucking badly. So, of course, I didn't. I kept my eyes on hers and my hands to myself as I gaped into her eyes. This was so far from Christmas Eve. This was sexual, and she was discarding clothing in front of me, fucking begging me to look as she gazed intensely into my eyes. But I was kind of fucking frozen as I stared at her in shock, wondering how she even worked up a nerve to do it. She furrowed her brows at me, darting her eyes out of her body, and lowering her head to inspect what I wouldn't. And when she finally looked up to meet my gaze again, my heart fucking broke a little. She looked so goddamn ashamed and bitter as she shifted her eyes around uncomfortably. I panicked, doing the only thing we ever did in these kinds of fucked up situations. I showed her mine, bringing my hands to the hem of my shirt and lifting it over my head without a second thought. I tossed the shirt aside and grabbed her face in between my hands, pressing my lips to hers and kissing her softly in apology for the fleeting dickhead moment. I probably should have just looked. She sighed against my lips, relaxing, as she brought her hands to my bare chest and slid them up to my shoulders. I pulled away while still holding her face in my hands, and watched as her eyes opened. And I finally fucking looked. I darted my eyes downward, exhaling shakily as I stared at her breasts. The bra was red and lacy, and looked gloriously uncomfortable as it strained against her breasts and meshed them together. I dropped my forehead to her shoulder, lowering a hand to trail lightly down her cheek and throat, over her fucking sexy collarbone, and down to one breast. I watched shamelessly as my hand cupped her breast once again, biting back a groan as I watched her pale skin swell from over the red lacy bra as I squeezed it gently. She sighed again, dropping her forehead to my shoulder as I watched my hand grope her, slightly mesmerized and desperately fucking aroused as I massaged and squeezed, dragging my thumb over the peak and earning a quiet moan from my shoulder. She shifted her hips against me again, making my breath hitch as I clenched my jaw tightly and tried my best to massage her gingerly. A large gust of air escaped her as she dangled her hands into my hair.
How do you stand it?
she asked in an oddly strained voice. I dragged my thumb over her peak once more while throwing my eyebrows and trying to concentrate enough to answer. Stand what? I whispered while pushing my palm into her breast. She sighed, massaging my scalp in unison with my hand.
You know,
she whispered vaguely.
Doing all of this without...
She paused as I slid my hand from her breast to her cleavage, trailing my finger down the middle of it and making her breath hitch. I was going to ask her what the fuck she was talking about before she finally clarified.
Without having any.
She paused again, as I felt the heat of her forehead against my bare shoulder.
Unicorns.
She breathed with what felt like a grimace. One lone chuckle escaped my lips as I moved my hand back to her breast, still amused by the euphemism. I have my own daily unicorn, I whispered with a smirk, shrugging my free shoulder casually while dragging my thumb back over her peak. I didn't see any reason to hide that shit from her. It's not like it was some big fucking secret that a teenage guy would do that. Some probably far more often than me. She lifted her head then, finally breaking the trance her breast head on me as I lifted mine, and gazed into her brown eyes quizzically.
Really?
She asked with a curious expression as she stroked my hair softly. I scuffed, still massaging her breast gently. Of course. I'd fucking explode if I didn't, I said, honestly, fighting back a cringe at the thought of one whole month with no release whatsoever. I watched as she pursed her lips and furrowed her brows at me. Everyone does it, it's perfectly fucking normal. I defended myself hastily as her expression slightly alarmed me. I wasn't willing to feel ashamed for it. She quickly shifted her gaze away from me, darting it around the room with a semi-grimace on her face. And I nearly fucking snorted. Because it was painfully obvious that she didn't. I couldn't see why not. Who wouldn't want a lifetime supply of unicorns on hand? Pun definitely fucking intended. I was also a little bit sympathetic, understanding why she was always so goddamn eager. She didn't have a morning shower routine. It must have been driving her insane every night. I sighed as I moved my hands to her sides, and rubbed them softly. Haven't you ever tried? I asked quietly, trying to push back all of the images that flew into my head at the thought of it. Touching yourself the same way I did, I clarified when she still didn't meet my gaze. She finally looked into my eyes, flaming fucking red and halting her hands in my hair.
It wasn't the same.
She breathed with a grimace, shifting a little uncomfortably in my lap and stirring my erection once again. Well, no fucking shit. I felt oddly responsible for her sexual frustration as I frowned at her and caressed her skin gently. There was only one more place to desensitize, and I didn't get my girl a real Valentine's Day gift. I supposed, as I gazed into her brown eyes lovingly, that nothing said Happy Valentine's Day like a big shiny fucking unicorn.